My grandson thinks it's great. I always say the club would beat them, but he says, Nanny, you don't know what you're talking about. We must save the club. Brings people into the town.
And what about council money being used to help save it? They put about £10,000 in. Is that fair?
They wasted on more things than that.
Steve Sutton reporting. Well, just 3 hours ago, Hartlepool chairman Gary Gibson called a press conference to announce he's resigning as club chairman. He'll stay on the board until negotiations with the new owners, who've not been named, are completed. So after all the pressure, why did he finally decide to resign?
I always said during the 4 years I've been chairman that there are two things that people would say, well, you know, when do you think you'd pack in, or what would make you pack in? There were two things. One, if I ever got to the stage where I thought that we couldn't go any higher division-wise, and two, when I stopped enjoying it. I no longer enjoy it. There will be an AGM held, and I shall look forward to being there, because they will prove very interesting and very satisfying reading for the shareholders. The club has made a profit of between £130,000 and £150,000 each of the last 3 seasons, which seems at odds with the current difficulties. But the current difficulties are cash flow. We don't have enough money in the place at the right time.
So what next for Hartlepool United, and what can other clubs learn from their experience? Joining me now in the studio are Sir John Hall, chairman of Newcastle United, Councillor Tony Cunningham from Workington. His town went through the trauma of losing its league football club in the 1970s, and Chris Cox, who's the editor of the Hartlepool Mail. Chris Cox, your newspaper's been campaigning to try to get Gary Gibson to resign. Has he been hounded out of office?
Not by the Hartlepool Mail, but by a whole set of circumstances which I would say are probably his own doing.
So what now for the club?
Well, I hope it can survive. That's certainly been my prime motive. I think it would have been a lot more difficult for the club to survive if Gary Gibson had remained as chairman. I think now there is a real chance of the town and business people in the town rallying to the club's support.
So you'd say it's good news tonight that he has decided to resign?
If you want to put it in those terms. I mean, I'm not happy about the news, but I'm very relieved about the news.
What would have been the alternatives, do you think, if he hadn't have gone?
I think the crowds would have dwindled still further. I think the chances of raising quite a lot of cash to meet the debts at the High Court would have become insurmountable. I think with him going, as I say, there is a real chance of people rallying together and seeing that club survive and go on to some success.
Sir John Hall, how important is it that a football club is successful? What difference does it make to a town or a city like Newcastle?
Well, soccer is the national game, and it carries a lot of hype and media attention. So from that point of view, you know, when a team's doing well, people in the town get their pride back. And, you know, even people who are not active supporters are very proud of the fact that your team's winning up there, as it is with Newcastle at this moment in time. But there's a price to pay. It's a very, very high price. And I can understand Gary Gibson's situation at this moment in time. Not so long ago he was winning. He was nearly at the top. But Hartlepool's problems are those of many clubs in a similar situation in British soccer today. And I feel it's very important that Hartlepool Football Club survives, but that's going to take the participation and help of a lot of people, and they've got to find their own level.
When Newcastle United started winning again, started doing really well, was there a real noticeable difference in the attitude in the city?
Oh, tremendous. You know, you have people everywhere smiling again, and just even a small instance, we played 3 of our matches, one of them against Man United, and it went to 27 countries worldwide, live, and another 27 countries highlights. That's possibly a potential audience of 50 million. The city of Newcastle of the northeast of England could not pay for the publicity which Newcastle football team has given them of this last year.
But apart from the feel-good factor, do you think Newcastle's derived any real benefits from their football club doing so well?
Yeah, basically there's a lot of intangible benefits. You go and talk to the people in the workplace and they'll tell you the factory bench, the machines go faster, and just by the good factor does bring in lots of visitors come to the area, and a successful football team and redeveloping the ground, we're going to get the European Championships. That's an added effect of actually getting a successful football club. They wouldn't have come here had we not been successful.
Tony Cunningham, you've been at the opposite end of this situation. Yes. When Workington Town lost its league football club, what was it like?
Well, it was obviously a very major blow to the town of Workington and the surrounding areas. No longer was the name of Workington in the national press and national television, people switching on, millions of people watching on a Saturday afternoon for the results coming through. Workington's name wasn't there. I also noticed in the years after Workington left the league that there was in actual fact a decline in the standard and quality of local football, and I think that was partly due to Workington going out of the league. But I think what the town missed were some of the glory days, the big days, in the late 50s and 60s when Workington played host to Manchester United, Blackburn Rovers, Nottingham Forest, Chelsea and so on. It gave a tremendous lift, a tremendous boost to the town. And Sir John was talking about the impact in the workplace. They used to say when the rugby league side in Workington was doing well in the late 50s that the local steelworks, the productivity actually went up 20% on a Monday and Tuesday of the following week when they'd had a good win. So a successful club does breed success, and it's good for the town.
Do you think Workington still bears the scars of losing its football club even today? In the film we heard about Accrington Stanley and the poor self-image we hear that town now has because it lost its football club.
Yes, because it's associated with failure. But I have to say that in recent weeks, the local authority has been trying to put together a package with the local soccer club in order to build a new stand and changing facilities and so on, to bring it up to the sort of standard that would be required to get the team into at least the Vauxhall Conference and hopefully back into the league. So those sort of developments we would hope to get rid of the stigma, to make progress, to have some success, which of course would be good for Workington.
Chris Cox, it's not a situation that you'll relish for Hartlepool.
Certainly not, particularly at this moment where you've heard on the film that so many exciting things, really positive things are happening down in Hartlepool. And I think for the club to go out of existence now would really be counterproductive and weigh heavily against all the positive things which, as I say, are going on down there.
These mystery Tyneside businessmen that we're hearing about who want to put money into the club, do you know any more about them? Is it really going to happen?
Well, I don't know who they are. Gary Gibson wouldn't tell me. I'd like to know who they are, and I certainly think the fans and the town would like to know who they are. I find it rather surprising that we haven't met them yet and had a chance to ask them about their plans. There are other business people in the town who have said they're ready and willing and have the cash to buy the club. I don't know what the position is, and it would be interesting, I think, for all the parties concerned to get round a table. I mean, now is a really good chance to rebuild this club, and I hope everyone grabs it.
So John, you wouldn't happen to know any more about these two mystery businessmen, would you?
No, I don't, but I'd only say to them that if they're prepared to come into Hartlepool, and they're going to have to put their hands in the pocket, because soccer is a business and it's a multi-million-pound business, and you need a lot of cash to keep it going. For instance, I said Hartlepool's got to find its level, because if they challenge and try to go into the first division, they're going to meet the requirements of the Taylor report immediately. So that means they're going to have to spend, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8 million pounds. So the people there's a lot of answers, you know, there's a lot of things to be done, and a lot of answers have to be given, but you need a lot of cash, and they'll have to dig deep in their pockets to sustain Hartlepool.
Are there schemes that are employed in other European countries that actually help these smaller clubs? I'm thinking in particular of the nursery scheme. Perhaps you can tell us a bit more about that.
Big clubs like in Spain, like Real Madrid and Barcelona, in a sense, own smaller clubs, and because there's not much attraction in playing the reserve games that we have, there's not much competition, and all the time, even Kevin and myself are sitting down, what else can we do? And if Newcastle United was allowed to own another club, we would give it serious consideration. We'd either look at Gateshead or Hartlepool or Darlington and have it as a nursery club and for our reserves, and actually play it in competitive football, because that's what our players need. And it works in Spain and Real Madrid, but they can't never get promotion.
Oh.
They always got to stay in the divisions, but at least they get competitive football, and it's good for those areas.
Would it work here, do you think?
I think there's a lot of questions about it, but I think yes, it could do. We would be interested.
You'd be interested in taking on a club like Hartlepool,
Yeah.
use it as a hothouse for
Yeah.
Newcastle United players. That's very interesting. Tony Cunningham, do you think that would have worked for Workington Town, a solution like that?
I think possibly it would have done, and certainly at the moment, if Sir John is suggesting that he has some reserve players who perhaps are not playing as competitively as they would like, Workington would be very interested in
Sure you would.
in employing them. And
Can you pay the wages?
Hartlepool's a bit
I think
close.
that is doubtful. But could I say that the situation that Hartlepool are in, a crisis often brings a community together. And I think now is the time for the community of Hartlepool, the council, the business, the club and everyone else to actually sit round a table and resolve the problems, because it is, as I said before, a major blow when a town loses its league status.
Chris Cox, I mean, that idea of a nursery club is a very interesting one. Would it be the solution to Hartlepool's problems, or is it a bit limiting?
Well, it's a bit pie in the sky because we're not allowed to do it at the moment, of course. But I think it's a very interesting idea. I think to capture the passion of football fans in England, I'm not sure that the idea of having no promotion would work, but I'm sure that it's an idea that ought to be explored further.
What's stopping us producing these nursery clubs at the moment?
Well, in the sense that I'm talking about, like the Spanish, the rules don't allow it. The FA rules don't allow it, and they're taking measures. People are afraid that you can fix the games. You know, so sort of if Hartlepool played Newcastle in the cup tie or things like that, you know, and they'll fix the game. Or if you were playing against another team and you didn't want them to go up, you could put 4 or 5 first division players, Premier Division players in. So there are problems to it, but there's a lot of changes need to take place in soccer, and it's actually they're starting now. Because I said before, it's a multi-million-pound business which has to be run by the professionals. But I'd say, in a sense, to the people of Hartlepool, all those who are interested in rescuing the team, sit down, get together. It's time to do that. But think very carefully where you want to go. Because the moment you decide to be ambitious, there is a price to pay for that ambition. And it'll cost you money. There's a lot of people sit around and basically say, oh, it's great, full of ideas, but who's going to put their hand in the pocket and put the money on the table?
We know it's a big business. Does that mean we have to accept that some clubs, the Hartlepool Utds of this world, are just going to have to fall by the wayside?
Well, they may have to go part-time. They might have to find their own level. Soccer might not disappear, but it might be that they're not full-time professionals. That's going to happen in any case. It's the change that's taking place in British soccer today. You've got to face up to it.
It seems very sad, though, doesn't it, that at the moment the FA Cup, the FA rules are such that we can't actually do much to help these clubs.
Well, it's like anything else. They've got to help themselves. They do get some grants from the FA. They do get money from the pool, etc., etc. But at the end of the day, it's a business. And the shareholders who own the business have to run it. They delegate to the board, if they get the powers, but if you're the shareholder and you're the chairman, you've got absolute power. And it's no good, because we had to do it in Newcastle. Newcastle's carried because of the money that my family's put into Newcastle. We're the shareholders. We haven't cried spilt milk. So Hartlepool or any other club, it's up to management to manage, and it's up to the shareholders to put the money forward if they've got it to run the business.
I realise this is a totally hypothetical situation, but why couldn't you, for example, take over the running of Hartlepool United and run it as, you know, not a sort of hot house?
There aren't enough hours in the day running Newcastle. You complain in the sense of Newcastle. No, it's one club at a time, and we've got enough on making Newcastle into the champion team that we want it to be. You know, one of the top 3 in the UK. We've got enough on. It's up to the people. If it was part of the structure, we'd have our management structure helping Hartlepool. But certainly, I wouldn't want to get involved at this moment in time until it was, you know. It would help. We helped them with a game, and we lost a player.
Chris Cox, given that we know very little about these mystery businessmen who may or may not be coming forward to help Hartlepool United, are you hopeful about the situation, very briefly?
That the club can survive? Yes, very hopeful. I think there's a huge will now and a huge obstacle removed in the fact that Gary Gibson has resigned. And
that's where we have to leave it. Thank you all very much. We leave our discussion on television here, but we're continuing the debate now on your local radio station. Give us a call on 091 232 6565. Put your points to Sir John Hall, Tony Cunningham and Bobby Moncur. But from close up north, good night.